On the other hand, there are pieces of legislation that certainly are following what we have seen the consequences of harmful platforms are. And in that case, I would say that hopefully with the investment and engagement of some of the tech policy community, we're able to do that more quickly and more effectively than we might be able to without the people who are working really full speed on those topics.
Welcome to GenAI Talks.
So much of the innovation that's happened has been about the actual technology. What most people don't know, there's a battle going on. And that battle is to ensure that these technologies are not only safe, they provide equitable experience, and most importantly, they have the right governance to make sure they do the right things at the right way. But to do that, you have to have a lot of researchers that are really on the forefront, making sure we're doing it the right way. And today, I have someone who's leading with an organization that's doing just that. Can you introduce yourself, share a little about the organization you're with, and the problem you're solving?
I'm Camille Crittenden. I am Executive Director of CITRIS, which is the Center for Information Technology Research in the Interest of Society. We're a multi-campus research center headquartered at UC Berkeley, but also closely affiliated with the campuses at Davis, Merced, and Santa Cruz. So within CITRIS, we have a number of research initiatives, including aviation, climate, health, and tech policy. So that tech policy initiative is one that I lead and work together with colleagues across those campuses, as well as fellow tech policy professionals, faculty, and students across UC Berkeley.
Can you share what is that experience like, and how is it that we can maintain not only the pace of innovation, but making sure we have the same type of rights protections that we need?
That's true that often the legal frameworks follow some of the harms that we're seeing from social media or other kinds of platforms. In some cases, we're able to get out in front of it. So, for instance, SB 53 is an example of legislation that was just passed this year that's seeking to provide a framework for frontier models. So those very new, large, powerful AI models to say what curbs there might be around the way that they operate and how to audit them and monitor how they're being implemented. Also to introduce some whistleblower protections for people who are working, say, within the AI companies that are putting out these frontier models. So that's an example of legislation where I think we really are trying to get out in front of potential harms. On the other hand, there are pieces of legislation that certainly are following what we have seen the consequences of harmful platforms are. And in that case, I would say that hopefully with the investment and engagement of some of the tech policy community, we're able to do that more quickly and more effectively than we might be able to without the people who are working really full speed on those topics.
Like, what are the steps that it takes to create legislation that's, well written, but also comprehensive?
Sure. Well, I'm not a legislative specialist or analyst myself, but I do work with the people who are advising legislators. So I think in part it comes down to people who are those experts who are giving the legislators good input. So the legislators might hear from their own constituents the concerns that they have around AI or other technologies. And then what I'm trying to do with the tech policy initiative is to help make available to those legislators the kinds of expertise that we have on a university campus so that they're not just hearing from the tech industry lobbyists about what might or might not be possible according to them, but also to have people who are actually developing the technology themselves or looking at the consequences of it and how it can be regulated to give the legislators a better holistic kind of framework to work from.
Can you share what the role researchers play in just that problem of enabling the right legislation to get made?
So as you point out, researchers are quite involved, especially at UC Berkeley and some of the other kind of highly technical campuses, in actually developing the technology that will ultimately need to be regulated. Research plays a large role. Both in the developing the technology itself, as well as looking into how best to regulate it. So that might happen in a law school. It might happen in a public policy school. There's a school of information. But in addition to that, we also have the College of Computing, Data Science, and Society, for example, where we have researchers who are both working on the technology itself, as well as weighing in as to how best to regulate it.
What are some of the things that you've seen or worked on, maybe most people might not be aware of in your studies?
One area that I'm really passionate about actually is broadband access. So we think about these high-tech solutions and even the customer-facing applications like through LLMs or through social media platforms, that sometimes people don't realize how necessary it is to have adequate broadband access to be able to take advantage of those opportunities that are made possible through some of those platforms. So we saw this really clearly, for instance, during COVID, when people had to go home and the families were working on maybe a single wireless Wi-Fi router to be able to do work, to be able to do homework, to be able to have access to healthcare through telehealth and telemedicine. So it's really essential that the broadband access is made available and is at an equitable price for people to be able to take advantage of it.
So you've also mentioned that digital equity is really a civil rights problem of our time. Can you share what that really means for people and why it's so important?
Sure. Well, as I touched on before in the question about broadband, I think in order for people to be take meaningful part in society and the civic process that we all need to, that it's important for them not only to have the access to broadband tools to make sure that it's not just a yes or no question, do you have it, do you not, but do you have it on a laptop computer or do you only have it on your mobile phone? And that's going to really diminish the opportunities perhaps and make it more difficult to get online and do what you need to do if that's applying for social subsidies or if it's applying for job opportunities or being able to do your homework. So there's a degree of nuance there that's important for us to pay attention to as well. So wrapped up in that a bit is digital literacy. So for people to be able to understand enough how it works and when they're giving up their data, what does that mean? What kind of protections might they have around that data? Do they have rights to, say, go back to the platform and say, I'd like my data to be removed? If my data is being misused, say, I put up a photo and someone uses that to create a deep fake. What are some of the remedies that I might have to be able to go back to the platform and say, take that down?
What would you say to the average person that they can do to help participate in this fight and ensure we get the best society we want?
Well, there are some legislators who are really fighting for that, those kinds of protective legal measures and legislative measures. And California Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan has been a real leader in this, especially trying to protect children in their online experiences so that they don't become victims of online harms. And there are certainly others in California as well. Assemblymember Buffy Wicks is another. And then at the federal level, there are some champions, although it seems like California has a better opportunity to perhaps move ahead with some legislation than we do at the federal level at the moment. So in that way, I think people should be aware of how these systems work, at least to some extent, so that they're not making themselves more vulnerable, so that they're not putting out information that then could be used by malicious actors.
So, and I'm excited to see this happen. To continue to cover these stories on the front lines will be an honor of mine. How can we stay in tune? How people follow what you're doing? And
well, we are online. CITRIS and the CITRIS Tech Policy Initiative is available on the website, citris-uc.org. And we would love for you to follow us there. We also have organized a broader presence for the tech policy work that's happening at UC Berkeley, because there are a lot of different areas related to tech policy that is happening on campus. So for a landing page there to find out more, it's techpolicy.berkeley.edu.
Thank you again. It's been amazing. I look forward to meeting you again and keep up the amazing work.
Thank you, Sam.
Big ideas, real tools, bold moves. That's what GenAI Talks is all about. Don't miss what's next. Subscribe and explore more in our GenAI community.